What's good, YouTube? We're getting ready to rock and roll as soon as I can click a few more buttons. 1 and 2. Let that start live over here. I'll go ahead and mute this. That seems a little low. Hang on, where's my headphone volume? There we go. All right, we're getting ready to get started.
And here we go.
It's the Benjamin Dixon Show.
Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is
not merely peace in our time, but peace in all time.
I have no fear whatsoever of anybody or anything.
Did you think no one was watching?
Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
your mission.
Suppose we go where no man has gone before.
To reclaim the American dream,
To be given the right of human beings to be afforded equal rights and equal opportunities.
It's the Benjamin Dixon Show. If you're hearing his voice, you're hearing the voice of reason.
You certainly come to the right place.
Ben Carson 2016. Vote and support Ben Carson for our next president and be awesome.
America became a great nation early on, not because it was flooded with politicians, but because it was flooded with people who understood the value of personal responsibility, hard work, creativity, innovation, and that's what will get us on the right track now.
DJ Ben Carson.
And I'm very hopeful that I'm not the only one who's willing to pick up the baton of freedom, because freedom is not free and we must fight for it every day.
Ben Carson on the 1 and 2.
One of us must fight for it because we're fighting for our children and the next generation.
Go out and vote.
I'm Ben Carson, and I approve this message.
Paid for by Carson America.
I'm Ben Dixon, and I disapprove of that message. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Benjamin Dixon Show. I am your host, Benjamin Dixon. It is Thursday night, November 5th, 2015. I think I need to get a calendar in front of me so I don't have to think about it all the time. But it is November 5th, 2015. Thank you for joining us. You just got through listening to a rap commercial for Ben Carson. Let me just play just a small bit of that again, just real quick, because it's so awesome. And be awesome. Yeah, no. Okay, folks. I don't know. I don't know whether to be offended, insulted, or just bust out laughing at this commercial. Probably a little bit of the first two and a lot of bit of the last. What do you even do with something like that? Here's the thing. The only thing that is really genuinely insulting about it is the idea that Ben Carson thinks this is the way he should have outreach to the Black community in general, but to anyone else who, I'm like, who is he trying to reach with this message? That's what I don't understand. That's the part that that really throws me for the loop. I have no idea who he's trying to reach with that message. But that came out today, and it was all the rave. And it just reminded me, the first thing it reminded me of was the Herman Cain ad that came out I thought it came out in 2012. It actually came out long before that. It came out in 2006. It was a Herman Cain ad that was not only cliche, but also offensive. Now, I have to give Ben Carson at least this much credit. Ben Carson's ad wasn't the content wasn't offensive, right? It was the delivery that was mildly offensive. Maybe it was offensive, but it was completely asinine, if nothing else. But Herman Cain actually put out an ad in 2006 that was downright just unbelievably racist. As a matter of fact, instead of talking about it, let me just play it for you.
Paid for by America's PAC.
The night's still young. Come on, let's head to the river and try out the slots.
Nah, I gotta get home. I promised Kathleen I'd help the kids with their homework.
You know, the Army really changed you.
War does that. It makes you value what you're fighting for.
So I suppose you want me to vote Republican, like you and your soldier buddies.
Not at all. You've got no reason to.
How's that?
Well, you don't work for a living, so what do you care about keeping taxes low?
Hey, that's cold.
You cheat on your wife, so why would you want an amendment to protect marriage?
Hey, a man's got to do what a man's got to do.
And I know you're not going to enlist to defend your country.
Not everyone's as slow as you are, bro.
If you make a little mistake with one of your hoes, you'll want to dispose of that problem toot sweet, no questions asked.
No, now that's too cold. I don't snuff my own seed.
Huh? Really? Well, maybe you do have a reason to vote Republican.
Okay. Now, in fairness to Ben Carson, as much as I gave Ben Carson hell today, I don't think anything will ever top the racist nature of that Herman Cain. Nobody does racism better than black conservatives, because they are free to say everything that white conservatives want to say, but they can't say. So that's the foolishness. So I got to thinking, and I think I'll play this at the end. I don't know. Maybe I'll play it now. I don't know. But I got to thinking in terms of all the problem with Ben Carson's ad is that it's so damn cliche. It's so cliche, and it's so token in the sense that you are honestly trying to communicate. Is this your way of communicating? Now listen, there are some real problems with it, right? There are problems with it in the sense that this is what he's presenting as though wrapping his policies inside of this type of music is going to be enough to win over, let's give him the benefit of the doubt, and he's going for the young urban vote, right? His policies are detrimental across the board, right? So wrapping your policies in rap music is not going to all of a sudden make young urban people or black people who are, I don't know who he's catering to in this, or who he thinks he's catering to in this video, in this rap commercial rather. I'm of the opinion that before this is said and done, when he spends this $1 million on this ad campaign, that the people he would purchase this ad campaign from, the radio stations, will be predominantly black. Right, because someone as asinine as Ben Carson and his team, as inept as his team, I think that they're putting this message out to the black community expressly, because he feels like this is the way that you're going to communicate with the black. This is how we communicate with the black community, as though rapping detrimental policies in hip hop music is somehow going to make it more palatable. So there are some real problems. I've been debating with folks about it all day long. It is mildly insulting. It is it's not something for us to be outraged over, but there's a difference between being insulted and outraged. I just don't like my intelligence insulted, right? I don't like my intelligence insulted. So notwithstanding all that, it's still absurdly cliche and ridiculous. And I thought to myself, what if all of the other campaigns were equally as cliche as Ben Carson's? And it went something like this.
That's the essence of the American dream. And whether we remain a special country will depend on whether that journey is still possible for those who are trying to make it right now. The single mother who works long hours for little pay so her children don't have to struggle the way she has to. The young student who takes 2 buses before dawn to attend a better school halfway across town. The workers in our hotel kitchens.
Okay, let me stop there. I have to stop. I have a lot more, but I just have to stop there. Oh my goodness, I'm in trouble. But this is how insulting and cliche Ben Carson was. So for people who don't understand why it's offensive, why Ben Carson's ad was offensive to the black community, I just want you to put it in context. Like, what if Marco Rubio had done the same thing for the Hispanic? Now, granted, the music I played was Mexican music, but it stood out a little bit more than traditional Cuban music. So I had to do a little research to find some good Cuban music, and I just said, to hell with it. Let me just go with Mexican music. But it's disingenuous. It's not disingenuous. What's the word I'm looking for? It's just cliche, as though this is the only way you know how to communicate with your own culture. I do have a few more. You guys just have to bear with me. you have to bear with me. I have a few more that I have to share. So if everyone was as cliche as Ben Carson, it would go something like this for Bernie Sanders.
Here's the simple truth, that in America we have millions and millions of working people who are working hard but are not making enough money to put bread on the table or to take care of their kids, and that has got to end. Today, all over America, you got mom working, you got dad working, occasionally you have the kids working, and we still don't have enough money to pay the bills.
That's if everyone was as cliche as Ben Carson. I have a couple of more, but I'm going to stop there. I'll come back. I'll circle back and play some more later whenever the mood hits me. But I just want people to understand it's just because you are black does not mean, or even if let's say just out of pure ignorance, because it's a possibility, looking at Ben Carson's eyes and looking at the way he has stumbled and fumbled all throughout this campaign, it's a good possibility that Ben Carson simply doesn't connect the dots and see how this could be at a minimum insulting, even if it's mildly insulting. Or better yet, let's take insulting off the table. Let's just say that this is not the best way to connect with the black community. It's a possibility that Ben Carson is ignorant to that reality. But ignorance is not a pass. You don't get a free pass just because you're unaware that something you said or did was offensive. And so I'm bringing up these examples just to demonstrate the absurdity. Like, when would you ever hear, and I guess the mood is hitting me, when would you ever hear Martin O'Malley be condescending to his ethnicity like this? Hang on.
I truly believe that we are standing on the threshold of a new era of American progress. Unless you become discouraged about our gridlock in Congress, talk to our young people under 30, because you'll never find among them people that want to bash immigrants or people that want to deny rights to gay couples. That tells me we are moving to a more connected, generous, and compassionate place. And we need to speak to the goodness.
You would never hear that. You know why? Because it's not necessary. At a bare minimum, you would never hear anything ridiculous like that because it's unnecessary and it's going to alienate your own community, or at least the people who share an ethnic background or a racial background with you. It's going to, and people can't see that, or at a minimum, Ben Carson can't see that. But you don't get a pass because of ignorance. So at the end of the day, it's just a really ridiculous ad that some people are going to find offensive. I think it's insulting my intelligence more than anything else. But then most of all, it's just a ridiculous attempt to connect with people who the attempt is going to actually backfire. So whoever is marketing on his team, they have an ultimate fail. All right, caller, what is your name, comment, and or question?
Hey, Ben, it's Pedro. I don't know how well you can hear me. I'm driving. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you pretty good, Pedro. What's on your mind?
All right. I just wanted to call real quick because I wish I knew the number to your texting thing. I think the word you're looking for is condescending rather than cliche or insulting. Is that the word you're looking for? Like,
yeah.
They're condescending to the racial categories,
right?
You know, for Ben Carson and his ilk.
Right. Yeah. And it actually came to me somewhere in there. I think I may have dropped that word, but it's all the above. Right. But condescending is the best word for it, because it's almost talking down, as though in this debate. Let me give an example. In the debate that I had with someone, with a bunch of people about this, whether or not it was insulting, cliche, or whatever, they pulled up President Obama as an example, saying that he did the same thing. The example they pulled up of President Obama was actually President Obama going and calling radio stations and having a conversation on radio stations about the issues. There's a big difference between having a conversation with me or coming to let's say if Bernie Sanders went to the African-American church, right? There's a difference between going to where a particular demographic is and communicating with them versus doing something as condescending as rapping your message in a hip hop beat. That there's a big difference. And I can't not do this last one. You guys just, like I said, forgive me, bear with me. But if every campaign was as cliche as as Ben Carson, I believe Mike Huckabee's would sound something like this.
I know this, and I think I speak for you. We don't gather here today because we hate anybody. We gather here today because we love God and we love this great country. And we do not want to see this country become the smoldering remains of what once was a great republic where the people ruled and it's exchanged for a place where 5 unelected lawyers think that they can rule. We're here to say, no, they cannot.
Yeah, if every campaign was as condescending as Ben Carson's campaign. So that was just kind of that's what today was like, ladies and gentlemen. It was that kind of ridiculous. So, but even still, nothing takes the place of this Herman Cain ad that I won't even play again, that was not only condescending because of the cliche jazz music in the background, but directly racist because of the content that was being said. So I would at least give Ben Carson this much. At least he did a very condescending message without making it a racist overtone message. So at least he didn't do that much. All right. I want to talk about a couple of other important things. Some important things. The first thing wasn't that important at all. I just felt like giving that, had to get that out. I want to talk about, there's an article discussing white mortality rates. This is, and it's actually a study done by, I want to bring up the names of it. I have the names over here somewhere, but it's a study that shows that the death rates among poor, uneducated, or undereducated is the correct word. The poor, undereducated white Americans, the mortality rates have increased significantly over the past several years. And it's increasing at such an alarming rate. One of the researchers in the study said that they had not seen anything like this since they started collecting data on HIV and AIDS. That's how dramatic of an increase that they have seen over the last few years. Just to give you an idea, most mortality rates amongst Americans is decreasing. Amongst the Black community, mortality rates between 1999 and 2013 dropped by 27%. Mortality rates among, and this is in a particular age group between the age of 45 to 54, but for Hispanics between that same period, it dropped by 19.1%. During the same time period between 1999 and 2013, undereducated, middle-aged, age of 45 to 54, white Americans saw an increase in their mortality rate by 8.9%. 8.9%. So as they began to unpack it, this is the interesting thing about the study. As they began to unpack it, it was they tried to ascribe the reasons. They tried to find out why it was that the rates of mortality, the rates of death amongst that particular demographic were raising while everyone else was declining. And what they found was two things that stood out dramatically: deaths due to suicide and deaths due to alcohol or drug poisoning overdoses. And as they dug down into the research even further, that's when they found out that it's not just white Americans that are dying at an increasing rate. It's a very specific demographic, which I've already said, but this was kind of this was revealed as they started unpacking the data, that it wasn't just white Americans. It was because the mortality rates amongst wealthy white Americans and middle class white Americans was declining. But in the particular demographic of poor and undereducated white Americans between the age of 45 and 54, that particular demo saw a dramatic increase in mortality rates between 1999 and 2013. Now, once they dug in deeper into the research, they found that some of the reasons for the drug addiction, if nothing else, the drug addiction could be, I believe the word is ascribed to, could be attributed to, that's the word I want. It could be attributed to health conditions, right? drug addictions, they were self-medicating. There are a lot of opioid use, a lot of self-medication because of chronic pain, because of chronic back pain and different sicknesses that are different ailments that they chose to self-medicate with. And that often led to addiction and also led to overdose. And then there's the entire alcoholic component, alcoholism component, where an increase in alcoholism. And then they dug in deeper to try to get the causal effect, not just the correlation, but the causal effect. And they found one word that stood out that you really don't see much in academic research, especially like this, was the word despair. They found that a lot of white, middle-aged, between 45 and 54, poor and undereducated white Americans had a sense of despair that was leading them to the increased alcoholism, the increased drug abuse, and then the other factor that led to such an increase in deaths, in the mortality rate rather, was suicide. Just people feeling so desperate that they were killing themselves. Then they went one step further, and they dug into the despair, the causes of the reasons of the feeling of despair. A lot of it was attributed to financial distress, the inability to cope with financial changes, the inability to cope with the loss of a job, the inability to adapt to the new economy, their skill set not being applicable today, no longer being useful. All these things played into this feeling of despair, which led to alcoholism, drug addiction, and ultimately suicide or drug overdose, which saw a drastic, sharp increase in the mortality rates amongst white 45 to 54-year-old undereducated, poor white Americans. And I keep saying white. I think I repeated that two times. I want to juxtapose that grim reality alongside the election last night in Kentucky, where they elected a governor who is going to gut, at least he made the promise that he's going to gut the Connect healthcare system, the Connect exchange, and the expansion on Medicaid, which the entire purpose of Medicaid is to help those who are poor get healthcare. So here you have a demographic of people who, by virtue of their undereducation, their lack of skills, their age, they're not able to get the type of work that would provide the type of health care and income so that they could get treatment for some of these chronic ailments and chronic sicknesses and chronic pain. They can get some type of physical therapy instead of resorting to drug use or to resorting to alcohol, or resorting to not just alcohol, but resorting to, alcoholism, without resorting to suicide. So you have this exact demographic in Kentucky, across the country, surely. But let's just talk about Kentucky and the fact that they elected a governor who is going to make it even worse for their medical conditions to get any type of treatment. Now, that's just on the medical end, right? We can also look at the wet dream of most conservatives, which is this globalized economy, which, we're fully integrated in the globalized economy. There's no going back. But that was a very intentional change. The outsourcing era, where jobs left the United States and went overseas, where now the gutting of unions. Think about that, right? How many undereducated, maybe they didn't finish college, but they were able to get a craft and a skill that they could then join a union and then have a regular middle-class American experience. But if you're in states that are right to work states, you don't have that opportunity for collective bargaining to get any access to a higher wage and health care that would help you. Even though you may not have had a bachelor's or a master's degree, you had a skill and you can unionize and you could provide for your family. But it has long been the wet dream of conservatives to deunionize the entire nation, and they've done so in many of the states in the South. And it has been the wet dream to outsource, to globalize the economy. Now, don't misunderstand me, right? Bill Clinton and Barack Obama have done their fair share in forwarding this neoliberal paradigm, but it came on the back of the neoliberal revolution in 1980. At least it accelerated. It actually began with the opening up of China by Richard Nixon, but that's just a historical perspective. What am I getting at? I'm getting at the same conversation that has carried over since Tuesday night. Almost to the point of death, conservatives have been voting against their best interest. This despair that is leading to increased drug use, and this despair that is leading to more suicides, this anger that's leading to all the addiction that was described in this article, and it's all over the place. If you just Google, I didn't put it in the descriptions today, but just Google white mortality rates increase, and you'll find different accounts, but then you can also click through to the actual article and read it for yourself. And when I say article in this context, I'm referring to the academic article. You have to pay for it, but you can get to the academic article. What I'm saying is that we have a reality, a paradigm of people who have been voting against their best interests for a very long time. Included in these votes are the results of electing these candidates that they've been electing all these years, has been the de-unionizing, if that's a word, but I made it up, so we'll go with it. The breakup of the union busting, right? Let's just go with a regular word. Has been the outsourcing of their jobs, right? Some of these things, like the outsourcing of their job, maybe, just maybe, it would have happened anyway as a natural evolution of our economy. Maybe, but we definitely know that it was exacerbated by policy and that it was accelerated by government policies, right? So we have been investing in a paradigm that has not only been gutting the middle class, but it has also been gutting the poorest among us. I'm going to go one step further. When you have a political ideology that utilizes anger to accomplish these things, and I don't know what's going on with my camera on YouTube, guys. I'll figure it out over the weekend, but it's shifting a lot. Maybe I need to stand still in one place. But when you have a political paradigm that utilizes anger, the anger and frustration of particularly white men to gain and maintain political and economic power, then it makes sense. It makes total sense that you get this entire cluster F of forces where anger is being used to drive a political agenda and an economic agenda that has been gutting any opportunity and any safety net that would alleviate the pain of the middle class and the working poor. That anger drives the policy, the policy drives more anger. And now we see, I'm not laying this all at the feet of conservatives. Maybe I am. I just see the clear connection. I was listening to the Diane Rehm show this morning. My brother sent me a link. I don't get to listen often because I'm always at work, but I was listening to the Diane Rehm show as they were discussing this. And one of the women on the actually a caller into the show, gave a very specific example of this in action. And she recounted a dynamic change, a drastic change in their working conditions, where now everyone, Black, white, and Hispanic, all of them who were on that line got demoted and they lost a significant amount of their income. I don't have the numbers, so let's just say their income cut by like 1/3. The Black woman and the Hispanic woman, they coped with it. They dealt with it because I guess in some weird way, being Black or minority in America prepares you for some of the crazy things that happens in America. But in her example, she said that the white man could not cope with it in this particular age demographic. He went on a rampage screaming about how Blacks and Hispanics were taking his job. So angry that he had a heart attack on the scene. And thankfully, he did not die. But just look at that. She attributed the caller attributed it to political ideology. As I was listening to the description and reading the article, I can't help but attribute it to political ideology as well, because on both ends, the political ideology has contributed to the negative forces, has contributed to the negative standing. It has contributed to the fact that you can't get anywhere in America at all today without having not even a bachelor's degree. Now you have to have a master's degree. And there was a time when a person with an average skill set could have survived, but that's no longer the case. But now you have this period where everyone is retooling and everyone needs to retool and everyone needs to prepare for the new economy. And any programs, here's the kicker, any programs that could have prepared this particular demographic for the new economy didn't even get off the ground in the 90s. These programs didn't even get off the ground. So I don't know. I don't think it's obviously not something that you can blame a political party on, but you can't help but to see the irony of it, that you are voting. Now, here are the exact demographic in Kentucky on Tuesday, the exact demographic. Some of the poorest people in the nation live in Kentucky. The people who need the safety nets the most live in Kentucky. But they voted for a governor who is going to gut not only their health care that they finally got access to, which could help decrease these mortality rates. He's going to gut the health care and probably is going to gut the rest of the safety nets. And they excitedly voted for this guy also that they can oppose President Obama and any Democrats. Absolute insanity. They are so committed to the cause that, and I don't know, maybe they don't realize that you're so committed to the cause that you're actually, for some people, literally signing your death certificate, because you cannot, once that healthcare is gone, you won't be able to get the type of treatment that you need. All right, folks, when I come back, I want you to join the conversation, 857-600-0518. This is the Benjamin Dixon Show. Buckle up for the ride. We'll be back after this.
When you're ready to lose weight, why count, track, and worry over every meal? Jenny Craig makes it simple. Just walk into a neighborhood Jenny Craig center or give us a call. You'll meet your dedicated personal consultant who helps you reach your goals. Together, you'll pick out delicious Jenny Craig foods that you'll love and design a menu that fits your life. And the best part is that you can get started losing weight right away. Don't wait any longer to take advantage of our best offer ever. Call 1-800-JENNY20 or visit jennycraig.com.
This is the sound of salmonella gyrating on your undercooked chicken. And it looks like Mom might be taking it out a little early. Don't let salmonella get funky with your chicken. On average, 1 in 6 Americans will get a foodborne illness this year. So use a thermometer to cook each type of meat to the right temperature. Keep your family safe at foodsafety.gov. Brought to you by the USDA, HHS, and the Ad Council.
On the next episode of Recipes for Disaster.
I'm making beef sliders for my friend Sandy. Nana taught me to always pull meat off the grill early so it's extra juicy.
Use a food thermometer to ensure ground beef is 160 degrees, or you could make people really sick. Sandy didn't think twice about the slider she ate until yoga class, when a nasty case of food poisoning turned her downward-facing dog into upward-moving lunch. Watch Recipes for Disaster at foodsafety.gov and learn the steps Maria unwittingly leaves out. Brought to you by the USDA, HHS, and the Ad Council.
When I grow up, I want to be a new pair of blue jeans.
When I grow up, I want to be a kid's first computer.
I want to be a bike that races around the country.
I want to be a bench on a forest trail.
When I grow up, I don't want to be a piece of garbage. And if you recycle me, I won't be.
Give your garbage another life. Recycle. Learn how at iwanttoberecycled.org. Brought to you by Keep America Beautiful and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to the Benjamin Dixon Show. If you're hearing his voice, you're hearing the voice of reason.
Welcome back, folks. Welcome back. Just laughing. I'm reading through the comment section, the chat room, and the on the YouTube channel. Somebody, Richard said, "Is that a real ad?" Unfortunately, Richard, that is a very real ad by Ben Carson. Hank said that he just won Mississippi. If he wins Mississippi because of that ad, actually, I spent some time growing up in Mississippi, so I'm going to leave Mississippi alone. The same time period, global. Same time period. Global suicide is up 40% in Japan. Japan has suicide every 15 minutes. Stress. I definitely think, Peter, that stress can play a huge role into suicide, right? There's clearly no question about that. But the problem is that mortality rates have been decreasing in every other demographic, right? African Americans across the board, Latinos, Hispanics across the board. And then it's been decreasing in white middle class and upper middle class, right? It's this particular demographic of poor, undereducated people who are killing themselves more and drinking and taking drugs to the point of overdose and dying. Is their life more stressful than ours? Quite possibly. I don't know all of their stories, but I do know that to see in those instances them to continue voting against their best interests, literally to the point where now they're going to be cutting their own health care. And that's a very scary thing. Very, very scary thing. All right. Let's go to this next quick story. I think I have like 1 or 2, 3 quick stories. I want to talk about Jeb Bush, not Jeb, but I want to talk about Poppy Bush, George H.W. Bush. Speaking to a biographer, the patriarch of the family, George H.W. Bush, I guess maybe as you get older and your time is limited, I think he realizes his time is up. So he's finally starting to say everything that he wants to say, or he's been wanting to say. But he's come out pretty hard against Donald Rumsfeld and Dick Cheney. And it's something to read, particularly in the biographer. I'm trying to find the biographer's name, Meacham. What's his first name? But Meacham is the biographer, and he recounted his disgust with the manner in which Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld, quote unquote, led, and actually not quote unquote, I'm paraphrasing, led his son astray in Iraq, made such a hardline position for his son's administration. Came out pretty hard against him. I'm trying to find a couple of key quotes here. A couple of quotes. He says, the big mistake that was made was letting Cheney bring his own State Department. In other words, talking about Dick Cheney was able to bring all of the people that he had previously worked with. And Bush said that, I think they overdid that, but it's not Cheney's fault. Oh, here it is. It's the president's fault. So he not only got down on Dick Cheney, Donald Rumsfeld, but he also came down pretty hard on his own son. He waited about 8 years, and actually, if we go back to 2003 to the kickoff of the war, he waited a very long time to express his disgust with what was happening in his son's administration. But it's starting to all come out. Everyone is Donald Rumsfeld is basically saying that dismissing him as being old and senile, essentially. And George W. Bush is saying that, he never had these conversations with his dad. Well, his dad is not going to say these things while he's in office. A good father would not. But I bring this story up because a lot of people, HW actually did some things that were necessary for America. And he did some things even on the social front that was pretty positive. Many of you may not know, but George H.W. Bush was the first president to allow gay activists to even visit the White House. So on the social front, he was actually far more progressive than evangelicals would have ever wanted him to be. That's first. Then another thing that he did was he actually, even though he promised and campaigned on no new taxes, read my lips, no new taxes, he actually saw that America was in such a bind because of Ronald Reagan's policies that he had no choice but to break his campaign promise and raise taxes. Now, some economists and some political scientists, they really attribute the success or the boom that Bill Clinton enjoyed. They trace it back to the fiscal policies of George H.W. Bush. Now, I'm not here championing George H.W. Bush, but I will say that he was a hell of a better president than his son. So much so that now he's calling out his son's errors his son's rhetoric in the article on USA Today. You can actually read either the USA Today or the New York Times version of the article, and you can get this, where he called out his son's rhetoric and his use of such harsh and divisive jargon that was good for politics, but not good for leadership and not good for governing. And we saw that during the Reagan administration. It was not the Reagan, it was during the second Bush administration. It was such an environment of absolutism or of almost totalitarianism. Like, it's either you do exactly what this administration says or you're not a patriot, right? And then it was always a conversation of the evil dictators and the axis of evil and all of this jargon that was perfect for getting his political goals accomplished, but they are very detrimental to the nation in the long run. And so Poppy Bush, H.W. Bush, they call him Poppy, has come out and is coming out in a book soon. So that would be an interesting read. Definitely a great marketing tool, if nothing else, because now I actually want to read the book myself. I want to switch gears here and talk a little bit. Let me skip here to the ISIS potential bombing of the flight from Egypt. So just a little bit of background. The plane that crashed, I believe over the weekend, the plane that crashed leaving Egypt, and I don't have the actual geographic location, but what stands out to me about this story is ISIS claimed responsibility for this plane that crashed, killing over 200 people. Russia immediately went to dispel that, to basically say that no, it was a mechanical failure. Now, U.S. intelligence and the U.K. intelligence officials, analysts believe that it might actually have been ISIS that brought down this plane using a bomb, using one of their terrorist cells in Sinai. As a result, Britain has suspended all their flights from the Sinai Peninsula. And here's the interesting thing. We said this about a month ago, that as soon as you engage in a war, there are going to be things that causes an escalation. I honestly think that if this turns out to be ISIS, which it looks like it was ISIS, that Putin wanted to do his very best to keep the world and to keep his people in particular from knowing that ISIS was responsible for killing all of these people. Because if ISIS was able to inflict that much damage this early on in this unexpected manner, then that really raises the bar in terms of where this conflict has to go. You know, Putin, in the manner in which he carries himself and presents his hardline ideology, this is now, if this turns out to be ISIS, Putin will have to escalate just to maintain his reputation. I said this a couple of months ago, and this is why I think Putin, the first thing he did was try to stop any idea circulating in the international community that this was actually ISIS. As soon as it happened, ISIS took responsibility for it, and as soon as ISIS took a responsibility for it, Russian officials kind of dismissed it and say, no, it's not possible. ISIS, it was a mechanical failure, and now the UK. Now, I wonder if this is not funny, but it just crossed my mind. I wonder if this is a case of the US and the UK trolling Russia. that would be a hellified troll. That troll game would be strong, but you know, it's not a funny situation, but the blame game, you have to understand why Putin would not want ISIS to get credit for this. Not so much because, you know, they could obviously, if it was a traditional fight, they could obviously crush ISIS. But because it's not a traditional fight, escalating may backfire. We all know what happened to Russia in Afghanistan the first time, or the USSR at the time, what happened to them in Afghanistan. So these non-traditional conflicts, asymmetrical warfare really does not play to the benefit of a superpower. America got familiar with that, right? We should have known that from Vietnam, but we didn't. So we got familiar with that all over again with Iraq and Afghanistan. Russia still did not learn from their first encounter as the USSR in Afghanistan. They didn't pay attention to what happened to us in Vietnam. They didn't pay attention to what happened to us from 2003 to the present. And they went into Syria to fight ISIS, and now they're stuck in a quagmire that they very well may need to escalate just to save face. And I told you, I said this a long time ago. Now, this doesn't mean they can't handle. This does not mean they cannot handle ISIS. It means that the cost, the price that they are going to have to pay to handle ISIS has gone up. Okay, that's ISIS. I want to talk about Marco Rubio and the trouble that he's in, not so much about the financial trouble that he's in. And everyone, the news that's come out about Marco Rubio's credit card issues in Florida, those have been pretty much exposed. If you're from Florida, you knew about those because of the 2010 senatorial Senate election. You know, there's not much in the way of wrongdoing that occurred. It just shows that he's not the best with money. So I'm not really trying to talk about that. I'm going to drop a link in. Actually, I think I have the graphic somewhere. Let me just pull the graphic up. That's what I want to do. So he's actually in trouble with conservatives. He's in trouble with conservatives because conservatives are questioning whether or not Marco Rubio is willing to go the distance on President Obama's quote unquote amnesty and immigration policy. The fact that President Obama has signed an executive order essentially saying that they're not going to actively deport millions of people who are here who pretty much overstayed their visas. Republicans are lambasting this as amnesty. Okay, so let's just go with the word amnesty. Even if it was amnesty, it's very similar to things that have happened, other presidents have done in the past. There are some differences, yes, but it's still along the lines of what Reagan did. But that's not the conversation. The conversation right now is that conservatives picked up on the conversation that Marco Rubio had with the media today, discussing his willingness to roll back the executive action that President Obama, the executive order that President Obama issued, because Marco Rubio did not speak with the same confidence about immediately undoing these executive orders. Well, conservatives are like, you're not conservative enough for us. You don't really, you're not serious about undoing this unconstitutional action by President Obama. And so now, you know, the word in conservative circles is that Marco Rubio's conservative bona fides, he's not really up to the task. Here's where I want to go with this particular conversation, because this is good for him. This is good for conservatives. It's good for you. You know, if you're that asinine and you're that absolutist, then you need to get into that kind of quagmire every single day. But the conversation I want to have about this is the level to which a person has to sell out their identity just to be successful in the Republican Party. Now, granted, this conversation stems directly from this Ben Carson commercial, and Ben Carson as a person, just period, right? Herman Cain, just black conservatives. You know, there is a level that you have to disavow who you are to be successful in conservative circles. And let me explain it like this. Actually, I'm going to let somebody else explain it for you even better. Bill O'Reilly.
America is run by white Christian men.
This was Bill O'Reilly circa 2007, explaining the power structure in America, which was run by white Christian men. That is the default position of America. That's what controlled America at the beginning. And that is what has controlled America almost throughout. White, Christian, and I would add straight men. That represents the status quo. Conservatism is 100% about maintaining that power structure of white Christian men. Now, they will allow other ethnicities to get involved, right? They will allow other races to get involved. You could be black, you can be Muslim, you could be atheist and be a part of the conservative movement. But if you want to be successful in the Republican Party today, you cannot be a threat to that default position that Bill O'Reilly defined America.
America is run by white Christian men.
And I want you to really think about this, right? You can be black, but you cannot espouse any policies. You cannot promote or be in favor of any policy that is going to undermine that status quo position. You can be atheist in the Republican Party, but you can't do or say or enact or support any policy that's going to undermine the position that Christianity has in America. And it's not even about, let me clarify that a little bit better. It's not about bringing down and destroying Christianity in America. It's just so that Christianity won't be forced down the throats of people who don't want to live according to it. You can't, that's the extremes that we live in. It's not that black people are trying to take down white people. It's not that the atheists are trying to take down Christianity. Well, not all of you guys. Some of you guys are. But most people that I run into, they're not trying to destroy Christianity. They're simply trying to bring some balance into this society that we're all created equal, right? And that we have the freedom of religion and the freedom from religion. But you cannot be successful in this political party that is the Republican Party. You cannot be successful in it if you're not willing to abandon certain key components of who you really are. And that's what Marco Rubio is running up against. Marco Rubio is running up against the reality that the very same immigration policies that helped his family get into America and helped him to be born in America and for him to have the opportunity to run for the president of the United States, those very same policies he now has to betray if he wants to be a successful Republican. I don't think Ben Carson has anything in him that he would betray because he already let it go years ago. The reality that he did grow up on welfare. He grew up on some safety nets. He grew up on all of the safety nets that many people from Owsley, Kentucky need, but now he wants to betray them so that he could be successful in the Republican Party. It's like a gay person. I don't and could never understand how a gay person could be in the Republican Party when they oppose your very existence. That to me, this is how they say it. You can be gay and be a conservative. You just can't marry a gay person. You have to marry you can't marry someone of the same sex. You have to marry someone of the opposite sex. There is so much that you have to sacrifice just to be successful in the Republican Party, which makes me look at people like Marco Rubio. And I have no problem saying that Marco Rubio has sold out because he's having to betray his own policy recommendations that he made. He's having to betray it just for the sake of getting this presidential nomination that he probably won't get. Actually, then again, he may get. I think he's their best chance of winning the White House. So he very well may get it. But look at the cost. Look at the price he has to pay. And that's a sad reality that you have to conform and break everything about you to fit into the mold that is acceptable to conservatism in America, that you can't be who you are. You can't be the person that you were born. You can't love who you want to love. You can't be pro-black and in the Republican Party because they translate pro-black as anti-white, right? You can't be atheist in the Republican Party and espouse your views on religion and try to enact policy that's going to bring parity into the difference between freedom of religion and the freedom from religion. You can't do that. You have to sacrifice the very thing that is core to you, all for what? Tax policy, for a tax rebate, for tax savings. What, for the promise of a small government? I don't know. Just for me, I don't see the benefit other than power itself. I think that could be the only benefit that Marco Rubio, Herman Cain, who's old news, what's the new guy, Ben Carson. You know, there's I'm trying to think of the there was an atheist who spoke at the CPAC convention, and she spoke to like 10 people in the audience. 9,000 people didn't show up. All right. This is the price that they pay just to have an opportunity to be successful. And I don't understand how they're willing to do that, because you're betraying the very core of who you are. Now, somebody brought up to me, somebody did bring up that Ben Carson at his core is probably a Christian first, more so than a black person first. And so his alignment with the Republican Party makes sense because it's all about faith to him. Okay, maybe I can see that, and I think that's a very reasonable argument. But to so many people in his own circle, he's black first. No matter what he says, he's black first. But I digress. I'm going to leave that alone. All right, folks, I'm just checking over a couple of things. I want to read a couple of your comments and answer a few more of your questions before we get out of here. Let's see. Benny the doctor, haha, get real. Yes, remember Henry Ford, Truman, Reagan. These were racist. Most Truman, Reagan. These were known racists. The most U.S. presidents were okay. Immigration for blowback. Reagan was okay. No, you're wrong with that. Russia and their records show the plane was in good shape. Okay. Old Maryland. I will address that. Benjamin, you're wrong on that. Russia said their records show the plane was in good shape. Actually, the very first thing that came out from Russia, and I will find that article while we're discussing it, was claim the airplane malfunctioned. The very first claim from Russia was that it was most likely a malfunction. And I'll find that article for you, so I don't have to do it live on the air. But that was the very first thing, because there was a debate. There was people who were saying that this was ISIS, and Russia was saying that no, it was not ISIS. Or at least let me clarify this. Let me hedge my bet. It was the most likely the airline that said it was not ISIS. And let's read a little more here. Any other thing? The rank and file Republicans use this to deflect legitimate criticism away from their party and ideology too. I have a black friend, so I can't be racist. Aiden 3000. Listen, I need to send you a check because you actually brought my point home. What happens is what is insulting to me is when people who are promoting policies that are absolutely detrimental to the individual identities that I talked about, detrimental to the to the Hispanic community, detrimental to the LGBTQ community, detrimental to the free thinking community, detrimental to the black community, right? Policies that are completely detrimental to all of these respective communities. We are expected to all of a sudden fall in love with you because you put up one more policies that are detrimental to women in America. We're now all of a sudden supposed to fall in love with you because you have put up a black face on top of policies that are detrimental to the black community, or you put on a gay face on top of policies that are detrimental to the LGBTQ community, or that you put a female face on policies that are detrimental to women. It's disingenuous, and what it does is it's insulting. That's why I was insulted by Ben Carson's ad this morning, because you are, one, you're condescending, you're two, you're so cliche, but then three, you really think that people cannot see through your packaging of poor policies inside of a black face and now hip hop music, policies that are detrimental to the black community. And so that it not only does what you say, Aiden, which is that they are able to say, look, we're not racist. We have black people who say the same thing, right? So they get black people to say these things. They get atheists, well, they're not really big on atheists, but there are some conservative atheists who are trying to make their way up into the Republican Party, and it's not going so well. But they'll take a black face, a Hispanic face, a female face, and Apparently, everything else is more important than those particular identities. Fine, I get that. But then they expect the rest of America to simply accept it because you put a stamp on it and says, here is Carly Fiorina. Everything she stands for is detrimental to women, but she's a woman. Come vote for her. The rationale and the reasoning underneath it is so insulting, especially when in hindsight, they try to convince us that the only reason we possibly could have voted for President Obama was because he was black, right? Black people aren't smart enough to actually look at President Obama's policies at the time, the things that he was saying that he was going to do, and say, those are the things that are better for America. And so I am excited to be able to vote for a black president, but I'm voting for a black president that's going to enact policies that are best for not only black America, but for all of America. Now, it didn't play out that well with Barack Obama, not entirely. Some things were really good, some things not so much. Some promises were just simply not kept. But they don't even give, when I say they, conservatives don't even give us credit for the ability to think rationally and to think critically about policies. They simply said, you only voted for President Obama because he's black. Look, we've got a black guy right here by the name of Ben Carson, and he'll even put on a commercial with some hip hop. Why don't you come over and vote for him? It's an insult to our intelligence. It is condescending. And because of those two things combined, to me, it's offensive. And it goes across the board. You're going to find that exact same thing play out for women, packaging a woman on top of policies that are detrimental to women. You're going to find the same thing for the LGBTQ community, where they take a LGBTQ face and they package it on top of issues that are directly detrimental to the LGBTQ community. And they look at us and wonder why we won't vote for them. Well, you know why we won't vote for you? Because we're actually smarter. Wow. This is so mean what I'm getting ready to say. But apparently we are smarter than the people in Kentucky who are going to vote against their best interests just because they're angry at all of the minorities. They're angry at all the blacks. They're angry at all the gays, and they're angry at all the atheists. We're just a little bit smarter than that. And we know how to vote for our best interests. Folks, you have a great night. I will see you Monday. I think I'm going to go to a movie tomorrow night. You guys have a good one.
And until that moment comes, when we, the Americans, are able to accept the fact that on that continent we are trying to forge a new identity for which we need each other, that I am not a ward of America. I am one of the people who built the country. Until this moment.
That we are brothers. It's not a question of Jews or Christians or Muslims. We're all in the same boat.
We need each other.
Love is a condition so powerful. It may be that which holds the stars in the firmament.
Until this moment.
Love.
Until this moment.
Love.
Until this moment.
I come to you today to say that we can build a newer and better nation. I say we can do so, that we must do so, and that we will do so.
You've tuned in to the Benjamin Nixon Show. Visit us online at www.thebenjamindixonshow.com.
That's the essence of the American dream. And whether we remain a special country will depend on whether that journey is still possible for those who are trying to make it right now. The single mother who works long hours for little pay, so children don't have to struggle the way she has. The young student who takes 2 buses before dawn to attend a better school.
Hey, YouTube, I already cut the radio show. I apologize. I didn't get to anything about Bernie Sanders, and I have a whole plate of things here for Bernie Sanders. So if you guys don't mind hanging out for maybe 10 more minutes, I want to just play a couple of clips of a great interview that Bernie Sanders did today and discuss them very briefly. Let me get over here. This is Bernie Sanders on NPR. Listen in.
I have tried to run
a very, very positive campaign because I respect Hillary Clinton and I like Hillary Clinton. I've known her for 25 years. And I do not want this to look like the Republican campaign where it looks like a food fight and they look like children. We have real issues and we have real differences. For example, I believe that our current campaign finance law makes the campaign finance system in America today corrupt. I made a decision. It wasn't an easy decision. I said, if I am going to walk the walk and not just talk the talk, I am not going to have a super PAC. And that means essentially giving up millions of dollars that I could have raised. But I can't go forward to the American people saying you got a corrupt campaign finance system, but I have a super PAC, contribute millionaires to my super PAC, not the other guys. So that's one. I don't have a super PAC. Hillary Clinton does.
All right. So that was the first clip.
In
that was the first clip of Bernie Sanders on the differences between he and Hillary Clinton. It was an extensive interview on NPR. If you haven't heard it, I suggest you go and take a listen to it. But I think it's the differences are very important, even though they may seem minute. Listen to the key differences between he and Hillary Clinton. Bernie Sanders wants to change the campaign finance reform or the campaign financing paradigm as a whole. And so the difference between he and Hillary Clinton says these things, but Bernie Sanders is actually acting out on it, not taking super PAC money or not allowing a super PAC to be affiliated with him. So I think that was the first thing. So listen to the differences that he outlines. And even though they may seem minute, I want you to think of what it really means in terms of character and in terms of how they will act once they get in office. Let's listen in a little bit more.
Difficult and complicated and crazy world. And nobody, certainly not Bernie Sanders, has any magical answers to the very serious problems that we face. But I think when people consider a candidate, it is important to understand their history, how they responded in crisis situations, how they responded when the decisions that they made were not necessarily the popular decision. Now, in 1996, I voted against this disastrous homophobic DOMA legislation.
The Defense of Marriage Act.
The Defense of Marriage Act. And everybody knows what it was. Right-wing Republicans pushing legislation that they knew was popular at that time. And there were some very good people whom I knew who in their hearts knew this was bad legislation, but looked around and said politically, I got to vote for it. I voted against it. So I don't want to sit here and tell you that I've been one of the great leaders in the world in gay marriage and stuff like that. But when I saw a piece of legislation coming down the pike, which was a real attack on our gay brothers and sisters, even though it was not a popular vote, I voted against it.
All right. That's the second thing. So Hillary Clinton now is on board with gay marriage. She's on board with marriage equality. She's on board with all these things. She's on board with all these things now that the rest of America, and actually, let me be fair to Hillary Clinton, right? Actually, no, I don't have to be fair because I actually got to that revelation not only before Hillary Clinton, but also before Barack Obama. I came to that conclusion for myself without the need of public opinion. So no, I don't have to give Hillary Clinton a break. Hillary Clinton only came on board with this once it became publicly popular and accepted and actually would work against you if you did not support marriage equality. So now she waited on the people to lead her instead of her being a leader. Bernie Sanders back in 1996 voted against the Defense of Marriage Act, which President Obama finally, I believe it was 2011. Actually, I forgot how. I'm trying to think exactly how that played out. I think he made I do know in 2011 it was ruled unconstitutional. That's what it was. It wasn't president. It was ruled unconstitutional. Okay. So that's the second thing. So are they able to take the position of something and to stand behind something even when it's unpopular? Bernie Sanders has already demonstrated that, and he brings that out as some of the key differences. It's not about Hillary Clinton being in favor today. It's about, are you able to stand on what you believe even when it's unpopular? They may have the same policies, but the differences, even though you may think they're minute, they really shout very loudly. Here's one last thing.
What happens tomorrow? When the going gets rough, who is prepared to take the right decisions even though they may be unpopular decisions. So I think if you look at my record, I remember like it was yesterday, the war in Iraq. I remember almost every editorial page in America saying, yeah, we should go to war. The Bush administration, public opinion polls say, yeah, let's go to war. I voted against it.
All right.
First of all, you're absolutely right.
Okay, actually, I want to stop that. I actually have two more clips. So then, of course, the most obvious difference between it was Hillary Clinton's vote for the Iraq war, and Bernie Sanders was the only the only senator to vote against the Iraq war. A clear distinction between the ability to do what's right for the sake of doing what's right when it's unpopular versus someone who's going to do what is popular and catch up with the rest of society when the rest of society is telling you, anyway, you get the picture. This last segment is about the black vote in Bernie Sanders, particularly in South Carolina, where a poll just came out where Hillary Clinton is leading him by like 71 to 15%. So he addresses that.
I think if the elections were held today just among the African-American vote, we would lose. But I think we have a real path to winning the support of a lot of folks in the African-American community for two reasons. Number one, I'm just not well known in the African-American community. I think people will tell you that's just simply the truth. So we have got to do a lot better job in discussing, number one, my record, which in the United States Congress is one of the strongest records of any member in terms of civil rights. Number two, I think even more importantly, unfortunately, but as everybody knows is the case, the African-American community and the Latino community are struggling in a nation in which our middle class is struggling. It turns out that in a nation which has more people in jail than any other country on earth, it is disproportionately Black and Latino. So I think the issues that we are focusing on, rebuilding the economy, and in the process creating up to 13 million decent paying jobs, many of those jobs will be for minority communities. Making public colleges and universities tuition free will benefit everybody in America, but even more so the African-American community.
All right.
I have tried.
Hang on, let me stop that. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's Bernie Sanders. You should go listen to the entire interview so that you can see the differences. Are their policies the same now? For the most part, yes. But were they the same at the critical moment when you can tell the character of a person? Absolutely not. When you could tell the character of a person is when the decision they have to make is unpopular. And Bernie Sanders has made the right decision on a lot of cases, on a lot of pieces of legislation when it was unpopular. I keep getting back to the same thing. And this is the same thing I want to drive home. Put a pin there. Let me address the Black community. Hillary Clinton is winning the Black community because of her popularity, the popularity of her husband. She's not winning the Black community because she has demonstrated any ability to do something for the Black community that has never been done before. Right? She doesn't have a pristine track record. She doesn't have anything that she can lift up and tout and said, I've been consistent on these issues that are pertinent to the Black community since 19 whatever. Bernie Sanders can do that. He can say that I have been consistent. What Hillary Clinton can't do today that Bernie Sanders can do, one, is actually discuss issues that are relevant to Black Lives Matter, who can actually say the names, can actually do what is important to the activists of Black Lives Matter, as well as policy issues that are relevant and important to not only the activists of Black Lives Matter, but the entire American community at large, because you cannot fix the problems of the criminal justice system and the problems of police brutality. You can't fix that in the Black community without the positive ramifications reverberating throughout the entire nation. Now, I love the way he put it at the end, and then I'm going to get back to my last point if I can remember it. The way he put it at the end was not only from the Black community up, but from the American community as a whole, all the way down. The things that he wants to do are going to positively affect the entire nation. And of course, it's going to positively affect the Black community, particularly the jobs program, particularly the free community college and state school education. All of these things would benefit the Black community because it would benefit everyone. Just honestly, Hillary Clinton has an undeserved advantage in the Black community. She has not earned it. And can you please debate me on that? Debate me on that. Hillary Clinton has not earned the black vote in the black communities. Black people are just kind of going along with it because Hillary Clinton. Everybody knows Hillary Clinton. Who's this guy from Vermont? Nobody really knows Bernie Sanders, and that's the problem that their campaign is going to have to overcome. That's on them. The campaign's responsibility is to get the word out. But in terms of all of these political leaders that are kowtowing to Hillary Clinton, I don't think any of them can actually come and show me things that Hillary Clinton has done that warrants the support historically, right? Or what she's doing right now, currently, that even warrants the support of the black community, because she couldn't even handle one Black Lives Matter protest. So what is she currently doing to benefit the black community? Now, this is the last thing I'm going to say. I'm going to get out of here. I'm not telling anyone that I'm listening to, that's listening to me rather, that you cannot support Hillary Clinton. Of course, we're all adults. You're going to do whatever the hell you want to do. I'm not being presumptuous and thinking that you're going to make up your mind based on what I say. What I am saying is that whoever supports Hillary Clinton, you just need to be very sober about who she really is. She is not a progressive. She is a moderate. And you can be 100% happy and supportive and get behind her and campaign, but just don't lie to yourself. She is a moderate who has done moderately good for America at best, who has not stood on issues, who's been on the wrong side of some issues, some very important issues, until it became popular to get on this side. And that tells you about the character of a person. And if you're okay with that, that's fine. But don't try to convince the rest of us who know better that we're wrong and that she's somehow the better progressive. No. Do you want to have a conversation about that she may be more electable? You might can argue that. I wouldn't agree with you, but you could argue with some people about that. But you cannot argue the point that she's a better progressive than Bernie Sanders. And that's how the cookie crumbles. I almost played my closing music again. There's no need, but I will leave you because I love you guys. I'm going to leave you with a special message from our favorite black conservative, Ben Carson.
America became a great nation early on, not because it was flooded with politicians, but because it was flooded with people who understood the value of personal responsibility, hard work, creativity, innovation, and that's what will get us on the right track now. And I'm very hopeful that I'm not the only one who's willing to pick up the baton of freedom, because freedom is not free and we must fight for it every day. Every one of us must fight for it because we're fighting for our children and the next generation.
Go out and vote.
I'm Ben Carson, and I approve this message.
Paid for by Carson America.